Welcome to Cut the COVID Crap Part 33. Waning antibodies from vaccination and not from infection. Credit to Michael Leunig, who made this cartoon and was subsequently fired for it by the looks of it. Anyway, let's start with the weekly data from the UK National Health Security Agency. It's a little bit different. They got rid of some data. Surprise, surprise. Um, on page 3, they still do show the antibodies, depending on vaccination status. In the latest figures published yesterday, they show that 99.4% of the adult population have antibodies from either infection or vaccination. So 99.4% of the whole adult population has got antibodies, either vaccination or from infection. That's up from 99.3% last week, so that's still growing. However, they also say in the same sentence, 45% of them have the antibodies from infection alone. 45%, so close to half the population that have antibodies have it from infection alone, not from the vaccination. Last week, this percentage was 36%. Now they may not update it every week. It's possible that they only update it every month. That granted, but you got to realize this percentage of so the total antibodies. Everybody, more or less everybody's got antibodies, but last week it was 36% from infection alone. Now it's 45% from infection alone. So basically, the antibodies from vaccination is waning, and the antibodies from natural immunity from catching the disease is not waning. I mean, if the if the percentage of people with antibodies stays or slightly grows, stays close to 100%, then clearly it's either infection or vaccination or both. But since the ones that have it from infection alone grew by 9%, that means that 9% came from the vaccinated group. They were vaccinated and had natural immunity, and the antibodies from vaccination waned. Again, um, I'm not against vaccination, but like if you have had, if you were infected, what is the added benefit from getting vaccinated? I mean, the the antibodies they stay for a very short time anyway, and if you're infected, apparently they stay for a very long time. They like again, 45% of the population has it from infection alone, and of the total population, 99.4% has antibodies. So there's hardly anyone without antibodies. Hence, also, it's impossible, statistically impossible, that the um, antibodies from infection wane or wane quickly. Anyway, um, that on that. But on the same page, page 3, the link is below as usual in the comments. Data on the vaccination status of COVID-19 cases and deaths and hospitalizations with COVID-19 is no longer published. So they don't publish it anymore. What used to be around page 40, you can still see the if you go back to the um, what's it called, government.uk site. If you go back one link, uh, I'll provide the link for that below as well. Then you'll see the published reports every week. If you go last week, you see around page 40 the infection cases, hospitalizations, and deaths per vaccination status. They're not publishing it anymore. I wonder why. I wonder why. Basically, I update them every week. The the number of cases in the last month have gone down from 9%. Only 9% of the new infections were amongst the unvaccinated people to under 7% last week. Same for hospitalizations. A month ago was 15%. Now it's under 12%. Deaths is roughly the same, around 10% mark in the last month. So it's clear that most of the infections, hospitalizations, and deaths are in um, the vast majority in the vaccinated group. Doesn't mean that vaccinations don't work, but it proves to me that natural immunity is dominant, is the most important. But they're not going to publish it anymore, and that's known as cherry picking. Last week I made a video as well on what the CDC had published. That's got the COVID crap part 32, called the CDC study on risk of myocarditis is a joke. Like you have a data set and you only pick out the results of that show a confirmation of the narrative that you want to proclaim. Yeah, and that's bad research. And it was so easy to pick that the CDC study. And actually, I looked for other comments as well, and Vinay Prasad has made a YouTube video about it as well, called CDC's new myocarditis study. Is it good science? And the verdict is clear. Vinay Prasad is a medical doctor. He comments a lot on research, and he's a pro-vaccination guy, but still he he slams this CDC report as well. And again, he's got different, slightly different, slightly different view on the exact things that are wrong. But like it's if you do a little bit of critical thinking, you see that it's a very biased report. Yeah, now it's the same for the NHS. Like, yeah, they're not gonna publish data anymore that are quite insightful, but yeah, apparently it doesn't fit the narrative. It's strange but true. Quick look. I'll keep it short this week. Quick look at worldometers.info. How was Denmark doing? Um, More than 50% of the population has had confirmed, has tested positive, confirmed by now. More than 50% of the whole population. And what percent of the population has died? Over 2 years since the start of Corona, 0.1% of the population. So, and you can debate whether it's from Corona or with Corona, but in any case, 0.1% of the population over 2 years. You got to realize that, I mean, if we approximate it, you get on average 100 years old. So every year, roughly 1% of the population must die naturally. Otherwise, if it would be significantly less than that, then we would our average lifespan would be much longer. So in Denmark, in 2 years' time, you would expect a total death rate of 2% of the population. From Corona, it's 0.1% of the population. And more than 50% of the population has had Corona, and there must be large number of cases that went undetected because it's asymptomatic often. And Denmark's curve is like Denmark with no restrictions whatsoever. The number of new infections is steadily decreased already. It's nowhere in the top of the rankings now, and also the deaths. It's never been significant, and now it's They got like 24 deaths in the last 7 days per million population. Also nothing spectacular. I mean, the normal rate would be 200. Um, again, taking 1% of the population per year. So over a population of 1 million, there will be 10,000 over 50 weeks, makes it 200 per week. Well, they get 20 per week. Yeah, so we get a new disease or relatively new disease last 2 years. Yeah, if then 10% of the deaths are caused by that disease or have some correlation with that disease, and there's no excess mortality anymore. I think if you look at Euromomo, um, it's the wave seems to be over. Yeah, why make it a big deal? Why make it a big deal? I mean, you get a new disease, and yes, the weaker people are going to be affected, like with any new disease. The older, weaker people are going to die of something, whether it's COVID or the flu or uh, heart disease, whatever. The overall impact is minimal, and it's Denmark with no restrictions whatsoever. Good on you for the Danish. I hope countries like Australia will wake up at some point. See you next week.